Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay. What is up, guys? We are doing World War I, 1914, Epic History TV. I've said in a few of my videos, one of my least hated, nobody likes to write essays, but one of my least hated experiences in writing an essay was about, we had to turn in an essay about who we believed started the First World War and why. I ended up choosing Germany, but honestly, we had to pick one and go. And my real answer is sort of a lot of people. It's not as cut and dry as World War II in terms of kind of who are the main instigators. Although you could argue that the devastation and humiliation in the Versailles stuff and the Versailles Treaty in 1919, or 18, no, 19, I think, was overly, was maybe a little bit too much on Germany, and so that they may play part in all of the horrific stuff that went forward in the kind of the horrific rise of people like Hitler and yeah. So Europe goes to war 1914. All right, World War I, 1914. Let's do it. This is back in 2015. Epic History TV, original video at the top of the description below. Do it.
(1914). The great powers of Europe are divided into two rival alliances: the Triple Entente, France, Britain, and Russia, united by fear and suspicion of Germany, Europe's new strongest power. And the Triple Alliance.
Sorry, I just want to say one more thing. A big reason why I ended up picking Germany is that they seem to be the ones who, although it started with Serbians, not necessarily known, I believe, unless one of you guys knows otherwise, you can let me know in the comments. It wasn't really known whether the Serbians who assassinated Franz Ferdinand, Archduke of Austria-Hungary, whether he was tied to the Serbian government or not. So obviously you could say, well, that's the start of it. Maybe Serbia should be that answer to who's the start of it. But the reason that I put Germany is because after that, Russia had an allyship with Serbia, and they were going to protect them against Austria-Hungary. Germany had an allyship with Austria-Hungary and was going to protect it against Russia. And then Britain and France said, Germany, if you get involved, then we are getting involved too. And so it was a big process of dominoes, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly who it was, but I think it was Germany because they seemed to be the most aggressive and willing for war. So you might disagree, I might be wrong, but that was my sort of main thesis.
Germany, which fears encirclement by its rivals, Austro-Hungary, clinging on to a fragile empire, and Italy, seeking gains at French expense. The spark comes on the 28th of June in the city of Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, is assassinated by a 19-year-old Slav nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. Austro-Hungary accuses its Balkan rival Serbia of having aided the assassin and sends an ultimatum demanding humiliating concessions. Serbia rejects the ultimatum, and Austro-Hungary declares war.
Now Russia.
Within hours, Austrian forces are shelling Belgrade. The Russian Tsar, Nicholas II, feels honor-bound to defend.
I believe they mobilized troops first outside of the conflict strictly between Serbia and Austria-Hungary, and so that's kind of Austria-Hungary. That's a case for saying Russia started it, but
Serbia, a fellow Slav nation, and orders the Russian army to mobilize. German Emperor Wilhelm II has promised his support to Austro-Hungary. He and his generals see conflict with Russia as inevitable, and the sooner the better, as Russian strength grows year on year. Russian mobilization is used to justify German mobilization, followed by a declaration of war on Russia.
And now
Germany knows war with Russia means war with Russia's ally, France. It has developed the Schlieffen Plan to meet this threat of a war on two fronts. First, its armies will advance rapidly through neutral Belgium to encircle and destroy French armies near Paris and win a quick victory. Then its forces can move east to deal with Russia, whose huge army will take much longer to mobilize.
Exactly their plan during World War II, except Hitler achieved the first part very quickly.
So Germany declares war on France. 6 million men are now marching to war across Europe. Italy, however,
okay, so that's across everyone mobilizing. That's not a single army, right? Because that would be insane.
Is neutral. The terms of the Triple Alliance don't bind it to join an offensive war. The United States also declares its neutrality. President Wilson...
We didn't start this one, fellas, all right? We didn't start this one.
...and the American public have no desire to get entangled in Europe's war. Britain is France's ally, but at first it's not clear if it will join the war against Germany. But when German troops invade Belgium, whose neutrality Britain has guaranteed, an ultimatum is sent from London to Berlin, demanding they withdraw. It's ignored, and Britain declares war.
I think a lot of it had to do also with a reason for Germany's aggression. I'm not saying that this is completely Germany's fault, World War I, but they obviously want to, the big people, the big kind of countries for the past 150 years before this point are England and France, and they kind of want to make themselves known as one in that conversation with those two. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments. I love it.
France, while the German invasion is held up for crucial days by Belgian resistance at the fortress city of Liège. German troops commit several massacres against Belgian civilians. The atrocities are inflated by Allied propaganda and help turn public opinion in neutral countries against Germany. France, unaware of Germany's great encircling attack, launches Plan 17, an offensive into German territory. But in the Battle of the Frontiers, they're driven back with enormous losses on both sides. The British Expeditionary Force clashes with the German army at Mons, but the British are heavily outnumbered and soon join the French in retreat. The Allies make their stand at the River Marne, 40 miles outside Paris. Their desperate counterattack saves the city and drives the Germans back. Both sides suffer 250,000 casualties.
Oh my
The race to the sea begins as both sides try to outflank each other to the north. A series of clashes leads to the First Battle of Ypres, where the Allies desperately cling on and prevent a German breakthrough. There are more heavy losses on both sides. The two armies then dig in along the entire 350-mile front, seeking shelter from deadly machine gun fire and artillery shells. Trench warfare has begun.
Men, make sure to change your socks regularly. Dirty socks or dry socks are your friend.
British warships win the first naval battle of the war at Heligoland Bight, sinking 3 German cruisers. Britain has the most powerful navy in the world, 29 modern battleships to Germany's 19.
I would think by far.
They now impose a naval blockade on Germany, preventing contraband goods, including food, from reaching it by sea. The aim is to bring Germany's economy to its knees and force it to
surrender.
surrender.
Naval power is so important.
But a week later,
obviously air power isn't as significant in World War I.
British cruiser HMS Pathfinder becomes the first victim in history of a lethal new weapon, the submarine-launched torpedo. German submarines, or U-boats, have a surface range of 9,000 miles and can attack undetected.
They can reach me!
From beneath the waves. They herald a deadly new challenge to Britain's...
I'm right. Oh, you can see my cursor. I'm right over there.
Command of the seas.
Enlisted is the free, brand new online World War II shooter. Command a squad of soldiers and participate in legend.
On the Eastern Front, Russian armies invade East Prussia. But they blunder into disaster at the Battle of Tannenberg, where General von Hindenburg and his Chief of Staff, Erich Ludendorff, mastermind a brilliant German victory, taking 90,000 prisoners and destroying an entire Russian army. The Russians contribute to their own defeat by transmitting uncoded wireless messages. A second massive German victory at Masurian Lakes forces the Russians into retreat. In just 6 weeks, the Russian army suffers nearly 1/3 casualties.
These numbers are insane.
Meanwhile, Austro-Hungary's invasion of Serbia suffers a humiliating reverse at the Battle of Tser. Austro-Hungary's offensive against Russia also ends in disaster and retreat, with the loss of...
I'd like to learn about the history of Austro-Hungary. I know very little about them.
More than 300,000 men. The fortress town of Przemysl is cut off and besieged by the Russians. The Germans are forced to come to the rescue, launching a diversionary attack towards Warsaw. It leads to weeks of brutal winter fighting around the Polish city of Łódź, but there is no clear winner. Meanwhile, the Turkish Ottoman Empire has joined the Central Powers, declaring war on its old enemy, Russia. Turkish warships bombard...
I thought the Ottoman Empire went a bit further into the Balkans or Southeast Europe.
...the Russian ports of Odessa and Sevastopol. While in the Caucasus, Russian troops cross the Turkish frontier. Beyond Europe, the war rages on the world's oceans and in far-flung European colonies. German troops cross into Britain.
So how is the tension between Japan and Russia right now? I believe Japan ended up at the winners' table at the end of World War I, if I'm not mistaken. Just like Italy, you know, Italy and Japan switched sides. Like right now, it seems like they're neutral, but I think in the end they sit at the winners' table. In the Second World War, they switched sides. But yeah, I wonder how because the Russo-Japanese War isn't that far in the past. In 14, 15.
Far-flung European colonies.
Wow.
German troops cross into British East Africa, modern Kenya, and occupy Taveta, while Allied forces seize the German colony of Togoland, modern Togo. But British forces invading German Cameroon are defeated at Garoua and Nsangakong, while a 3,000-strong force attacking German Southwest Africa, modern Namibia, is captured at Saint-Fontaine.
Down in Africa.
A month later, British landings at Tanga end in chaos and defeat at the hands of a much smaller German force led by Colonel von Lettow-Vorbeck. Cut off from Germany, Lettow-Vorbeck goes on to wage a highly successful guerrilla war against the Allies, tying down huge numbers of troops. In Asia, Japan honors its treaty with Britain and declares war on Germany. Japanese forces go on to seize the German naval base at Tsingtao. The German colonies of Samoa and New Guinea surrender to troops from New Zealand and Australia. But in the Pacific, off the coast of Chile, German Admiral von Spee's powerful East Asia squadron sinks 2 British cruisers at the Battle of Coronel. Both ships are lost with all hands. 5 weeks later, he runs into a British naval task force at the Falkland Islands. 4 of the 5 German cruisers are sunk. Von Spee goes down with his flagship. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, British troops seize control of the Ottoman port of Basra, securing access to the vital Persian oil that fuels the British fleet.
A lot of people call the 7 Years' War technically it was the First World War, you could call it.
That winter, Austrian troops finally capture Belgrade. But the Serbs then counterattack and drive them back once more. The fighting in Serbia has already cost around 200,000 casualties on each side. In the North Sea, German warships mount a hit-and-run raid against English coastal towns, shelling Hartlepool, Whitby and Scarborough, and killing more than 100 civilians. On the Western Front, the French launched their first major offensive against the German lines. But the First Battle of Champagne leads to small gains at a cost of 90,000 casualties. While in the Caucasus...
I just want to turn up my air conditioning. It's really warm in here. Okay.
Of 90,000 casualties. While in the Caucasus, an Ottoman offensive through the mountains in midwinter ends in disaster at Sarikamish. Turkish casualties total 60,000, many frozen to death. On the Western Front, that first Christmas is marked in some sectors by a short truce and games of football.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this.
In no man's land, the killing zone between the trenches.
Awesome video, great recommendation. Oh, who recommended this? I didn't give the shout out. Did I? I don't think so.
Hey guys, what's up? McJibbin here.
Who said it? I'm gonna find it. I can't find it. I'll give you a shout out in the next video. All right. Great video, obviously. Epic History TV. Great channel. I'm going to watch their Alexander the Great Part 3 soon. All right. Hit that bell icon, like and subscribe. See you guys.